Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming to this presentation. Today, we're going to be talking about scaling e-commerce data collection for growth in your business. It's one thing to collect data, it's another thing to do that at scale. And obviously for your businesses, you need a lot of data, maybe for many different competitors, many different industries. You guys know the data you need, but the point is you probably want a lot of it. And the more data you have, the better insights you can usually generate. So just a quick introduction to myself. My name is Tim Rasika. I'm a software developer and a content creator. I have a large YouTube channel where I mostly teach software engineering and do kind of some technical level development. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk to you from a developer perspective so you understand what your developers actually need to do and the tools you can provide them to make their lives easier and to make things more affordable and more efficient for your business. I've worked with Bright Data on a ton of different projects, doing some web scraping, kind of ideation, and inspiration ideas for subscribers on my channel. Now, I just want to give a quick summary of the session that we did previously. This happened earlier this morning. If you missed it or you couldn't get a seat, what we were talking about was navigating data collection barriers. So it seems like there's all this data out in the ether. It should just be easy to collect, especially if it's publicly available. But there's actually a lot of challenges that you're going to run into when you try to collect that. Now, we showed you some solutions that allow you to get past those challenges relatively easily, like the web unlocker and the CAPTCHA solver from Bright Data. We'll touch on those a little bit in this as well. And then also talked about managing infrastructure, proxies, and IP addresses, because sometimes your IP address could be banned and you need multiple different kind of servers, proxies, and able to scrape information from different kind of countries, right? So you could compare prices from Australia, US, Canada, etc. And then how we scrape data efficiently. Now, in this session specifically, what you're going to learn is about the complexities of scaling data operations. So yeah, we know how to scale now, or we know how to collect data, but how do we scale it up and what's actually involved in that, especially what your developers are going to be doing. And when you tell them, hey, go collect 100,000 pages, what do they actually need to deal with? And then we'll talk about some solutions and how to leverage advanced integrations and proxy management, and then some best practices in robust data infrastructure. So before we get into all of the scaling and I show you some demos, I want to talk about the data collection process so you understand what's actually involved from, okay, we want some data, to how do we actually collect it and then access it, etc. So the first step in our data collection process is, well, collection, right? We need to actually collect all of the data. Now we can do that by, first of all, having some kind of strategy. What data do we want? What format is it in? Where is it? Then we're going to have some kind of automation. Obviously, we're not just going to pay someone to go and look at a bunch of websites. We need to write some kind of scripts. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we have quality data. If we have poor data, if it's out of date, that's not going to be useful to us. In fact, that could be more harmful than having no data at all. Now, once we collect the data, we need to store the data. Now, I'm not going to talk about that too much in this presentation. In fact, tomorrow we'll have another one where we talk more about storage. But the point is, we need to have scalable infrastructure. We need to have security for our data so that once we collect it and we spend all of this money, not just everyone can grab it. And we need to organize the data in a structured format where someone can go in there and very easily be able to utilize it in an effective way. And then lastly, we have access. Once we've collected it, once we've stored it, we need a way to access it. Ideally, we need a way for someone who's not technical to access it, a nice dashboard. We're actually going to have a presentation tomorrow where we talk about a tool called Bright Insights, which really solves all of this for you and shows you how to access the data in the most user-friendly way with all of the filters and kind of insights built in. So you don't need a whole team to be analyzing the data once you collect it. In terms of things we want to do, integration capabilities, maybe APIs, databases, your own internal tools. We want it to be user-friendly, as I said. Ideally, all of you in the audience should be able to use the data once it's collected. And then we want some advanced analysis, maybe machine learning models, AI, figuring out what actually is going on with this data and turning data into information we can use in our business. So, scaling data collection. These are questions that maybe your engineers may have asked, that you may have thought about. And I just want to go through some of them because I'm going to kind of answer them in this presentation. So first of all, how do we continuously collect web data? It's one thing to go to Amazon on March 3rd and collect all of the information, but how do we do this at scale and continuously so we can compare different prices, we can see stock, we can see inventory, we can see if promotions are going on. These are the insights that we need and that are valuable. How can we go from tens of pages to thousands of pages? It's one thing to sit there and look at a few results, but how do we actually collect hundreds of thousands of search results and do that in an efficient and affordable way in our business? And then how do we build something robust? It's great if it works once, but we want it to work tens, if not hundreds of thousands of times and be able to rely on it in our business. And then last thing that we want to look at that a lot of companies don't consider is the ethical and legal standards. We want to make sure that we're doing this in a way where we're not going to get sued. It's actually, with the terms and conditions, it's legal. And this is something that Bright Data actually takes care of for you so that you don't need to deal with that and have all of those, think about that in your day-to-day. All right, so now what I want to do is show you a quick demo. And this is just going to illustrate how difficult it actually is when you want to scale data collection and to collect it. So here we have a website, Wayfair. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. In this case, we just looked up beds. And we'll kind of play the demo here. And you'll see that, let's give this a second, that we have something like 39,000 results, quite a few results. And what we want to do probably is collect maybe all of the different beds, right? Now, there'll be hundreds of thousands of different beds on all these different pages. And the idea is obviously we can't do this manually. We need some kind of automation. So if I was a solo developer or you were hiring me as a freelancer, what I'm about to show you right here is exactly what I would do. And you're going to see all the challenges that I run into. And so if you went to your engineers and said, hey, go scrape 40,000 pages from Wayfair and they don't have access to the tools they need, this is the challenge they're going to run into. So this is a simple script. If it's too confusing, you can simply ignore it. But all it's going to be doing is just scraping 30 pages. You can see I'm just going from 1 to 30. Let's give this a second here. And I'll just execute the code. And I just want to show you how long it takes so you get some perspective on what actually happens when you do try to scale this up, even just to 30 pages, which really isn't that much. So you can see right now, it's going to just kind of open up Wayfair. This is a bot or a script automatically running this. It took 11 seconds just to scrape a single page. And as we continue to go through this, you'll see it's running at 10 times speed. It's going to hit all of these different pages. Now, soon you'll actually see that we'll be detected as a bot, which is what's happening right now. And we're actually brought to a CAPTCHA, which doesn't even allow us to scrape those pages. Now, the point is here, we only tried to scrape 30 pages. This isn't a lot of data in the grand scheme of things. And on my own local computer, once I hit the page about 10, 15 times, I'm immediately being blocked. I'm being detected as a bot. And at this point, if I'm a solo developer, I don't really know what to do. How do I get past this? Do I have to wait much longer? Do I hit the page every 30 seconds, every minute? Again, maybe not something you're going to consider, but what your team is going to have to deal with. And if you can give them the tools to overcome that, obviously you'd want to do that. So let's get out of this demo here, just to kind of show you how complicated it is. Let's go over here. Okay. Great. So we looked at that demo. Now, for any of you that are maybe a bit more technologically advanced, or maybe you're more on the developer side, you may be asking the question, okay, I mean, that's great, but why don't we just scale vertically and horizontally? Why don't we just add more compute power to our computer? If we have a faster CPU, can't we grab more pages? Or if we have more computers, hundreds or thousands of computers, doesn't that mean that we'll get past that issue and it's not going to take so long? If speed's the issue, why don't we scale it up vertically or horizontally? Well, I'm going to show you what happens when we try to do that. This is an example here of vertical scaling. All that means is that I've just added way more browsers to my computer. I'm just going to load as many browsers as I possibly can. I've just bumped up the RAM, I bumped up the CPU, and I want to show you what happens when we attempt to do that. So same kind of example as before here. We're going to try to scrape 30 pages. Again, really not that many pages to be scraping. You can kind of see the URL that we're going to, just increasing the page every time. And you'll watch what happens when I actually attempt to do this. And rather than doing one page at a time, I try to do all 30 pages at the same time. So this is my computer, and you can see we're going to just load up all these different browser windows. Give it a second to load here so we can see. That's kind of an example of what it looks like. And immediately in all these browsers, you're seeing that we have CAPTCHAs and we're being blocked. So exact same thing happens this time, even faster. We try to hit the page too many times. And now from this IP address, we're really just not able to get any results or products. And even though this ran faster, we couldn't collect any of the data. So we can't simply just add a faster computer or add multiple computers, especially if we're on the same IP address, running from the same area, we're going to get blocked. So let's get out of this. So as you can see, scraping at scale is complicated. We have to deal with the infrastructure, CAPTCHAs. If we can bring this next. We have to actually develop a scraper that can go through and grab all of the information if we even can get past this part right here. And then we need to move to production. Okay, it's great to do this in a development environment, but how do we put this in a production environment where maybe you guys can actually run these tools and you don't need to ask the developer to use the scraper for you? So now what I want to show you is an example of using Bright Data. This uses something known as the scraping browser. And this is pretty much just going to solve all of the problems for us and allow us to actually scale. So you'll notice here, compared to the other example, there's very minimal code change. All we've really done here is just connected to the Bright Data browser. Let's pause that for a second. And you're gonna see now how quickly we're able to scrape our 30 pages and how we don't deal with all of the captchas and the blocks that we had before. So you can see that what we're doing is navigating to a page. We're gonna scrape the different product names. Let's just run this. It's in 3 times speed. And you'll see how quickly we get all this information and that we actually were able to gather it and we weren't blocked. Give this a second. And you can see down here, in 44 seconds, we were able to scrape 30 pages. And now let's scale up to something like 250 pages. Again, running in 3 times speed. You'll notice it'll take slightly longer just because we need to load up all of the browsers, but it's not an exponential increase like it would be if I was running it on my local computer. I needed to wait to constantly access the page. So in 95 seconds, I was able to scrape 250 pages, didn't have any blocks, didn't need to deal with captchas. That was all handled for me by Bright Data. And you can imagine if I wanted to scale up to 250,000 pages, maybe that would take a few minutes, but it's going to be significantly faster than if I wanted to run this on my own computer, right? So these are the kind of tools that you want your developers to have access to, because if they need to scrape a ton of pages, they just feasibly can't do it without access to these kind of tools. Let's get rid of this. So now let's quickly talk about kind of 2 main types of browsers we can use to do this type of scaling. The first one is a headless browser. Now this is provided by Bright Data, and a headless browser is simply one that does not include a graphical user interface. Now this is good because we can more efficiently scrape data because there's lower overhead or just faster to spin these up. And we can run as many headless browsers as we want, which is kind of what you saw before. We had 250, or we could have hundreds of thousands of them running at the exact same time, which means we don't need to wait for one to finish before the next one spins up. Now, kind of going a level beyond that, we have the scraping browser. Sometimes you actually need a browser that has a graphical user interface in order to emulate a human when you're on a website. When we go to a website, sometimes we need to click on buttons, sometimes we need to interact with a forum, we need to load different media. And if you have the headless browser, sometimes it's not capable of doing that. So Bright Data provides a scraping browser, which gives you all of these different functions that can automatically unlock websites and allow you to interact with it just like a human would. Now, this also integrates with popular frameworks that your development team would already know, meaning there's no change or nothing new they need to learn. They can just utilize this tool and control it like they would any browser running on their local computer. So let's go through a quick demo of why you would actually need the scraping browser. Here's Airbnb, but all kinds of e-commerce sites as well. Amazon, Wayfair, Newegg, etc. might require this interaction as well. Then Airbnb, you'll see that this is actually a bot running. And what it's going to do is just interact with the site. So this is what you would use the scraping browser for. We're going to go on here. It's going to type in Las Vegas. It's going to select the check-in date and the checkout date. So let's go ahead and do that. And then it will go ahead and press the search button, and then we can load the results. Again, the reason why we needed the scraping browser there is because with Airbnb, we actually need to go through that form in order to get the data that we need. So if you're in a situation where you need that, then you can use a tool like the scraping browser. And again, a lot of e-commerce sites do require that interaction with the page. Next. Great. So now I'm going to introduce you to one level even beyond this. So what you saw before, your developer won't really need to change anything. They'll just be working on their own local computer like they normally would, and they'll connect to these tools that you can provide them. However, if you want to go a step further, Bright Data does have something known as the Web Scraper IDE. Now, this is something you can use right in the browser, and it pretty much brings all of the tools that you already saw together. So we have access to, for example, an IDE, we have a crawler, scraper, and what we can do is have the proxy and unblocking features like the captcha solver and loading the website, making sure that we're not going to have our IP address blocked. We can access it from different locations. And I'll just show you a quick demo of what that looks like. And also another great benefit of the Web Scraper IDE is that it allows us to kind of host the scraper in the cloud. So we don't need to worry about our own infrastructure, running our own servers, anything along those lines. All we do is just can simply make a call to the scraper that we set up, and then it will automatically grab all of the data in the way that we've made it. And then it can send the data in really any format that we want. It can send it to you as an email. It can send it to you in a database. Your developers will know what format they need, but that's what the scraper will do. So let's look at a quick demo so you can see some of the features of it. So here, this is kind of what it looks like. We have some code on the side, which is the scraping code. And then we have a live browser on the right-hand side, which actually allows you to see exactly what's going on in your code while you're writing it and developing it. So it's just a lot faster because you can actually see everything and you can debug it in live time, meaning if there's anything wrong, you can kind of see what's actually going on. So in this case, we're scraping eBay. Again, you don't need to worry about what the code's actually doing, but as a developer, we can watch what it's scraping, and we can see all of the results that it's generated for us right here. Now, this is just kind of a quick demo. Another thing to note here is that the scraping browser provides a bunch of functions that normally the developer would have to implement themselves. So in this case, you can wait for text, click, etc. Things that are annoying to build out are just kind of provided for you automatically by the scraping browser. It's kind of its own framework. It just provides a bunch of tooling that can really speed up this process. So let's get through that. Okay. Now here, I just want to show you that once we do build the scraper, then what we can do is actually invoke it, and we can kind of let it run. So we could go to the site and we could manually make it run, or your developers can trigger this from something like an API, or you could connect it with your own internal tools or your own website and have it run automatically. So again, you don't need to worry about hosting all of this on your own. It's just handled for you. Bright Data does all of the hosting. You simply pretty much press a button and you'll just get the data in whatever format you want. So you can see here just some settings, just showing you that you can get this via an email, via, a database. You can run it on your own site. That's pretty much it for that demo. And let's move on here. Let's talk about now what this actually means for you. So we have all of these different tools, again, things you're going to want to provide your development team so that they can actually speed up and get past these scaling challenges that typically are almost impossible to do in-house. What this means is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to build a solution that already exists. Why would you want to hire out an entire development team and have them manage this complex infrastructure, deal with these scaling challenges, build their own CAPTCHA solvers when you can just use one that's already here? It also means drastically reduce developer resources. You now don't need expert level developers to get the web data that you're looking for. You can just use a tool like this. And you can also quickly develop things. So the reason why I really like this product is because it allows me to very quickly go from an idea to actual reality and grabbing a ton of different pieces of data. Whereas normally, if you didn't have access to this, it could take you days, weeks, months to get the data that you need. It also allows you to focus on e-commerce, which is what your business is about, not software. You don't need to be a software company. And it's transparent and predictable pricing. I mean, if we hired a team of developers in-house, it's pretty much impossible for us to know how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost us to get this information. Whereas here, you know how much it costs. It's very easy to predict it, and obviously something good for your business. And if you do have a more advanced team and you have a whole in-house developer suite, it gives them the full flexibility. They can hook into it at whatever level they want, which means they're not going to be blocked, or they're not going to say, oh, this doesn't allow us to do what we would normally do. It's just really helping them get past those obstacles of scaling. So that is pretty much it.